Hello, everyone. This is Darren Prine with Cloud Tech Gurus, and joining me is Trevor Clark, CEO for ShiftOff, one of the top providers in the space of what's called GigCX. And today we're going to cover everything you need to know about GigCX. This is a good one. I think you're going to enjoy it. So, Trevor, welcome. Great to have you on. Maybe give us a quick intro on yourself and ShiftOff.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Darren. It's really great to be here. GigCX is one of those things that I can't stop talking about. I think it is, well, it's the reason ShiftOff exists. Back when I was running contact center operations for large telco, I just always thought to myself, if we could bring in a flexible Uber-like model, we'd solve almost all of our problems, from being able to attract talent to perfectly staffed, to have flexibility and to surge up when the unexpected happen, and even cut costs. So this has been part of our DNA for a few years. It's really exciting that people are starting to pay attention. So it's good.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's the biggest revolution in the contact center industry in maybe 20 years. And I'm not even sure what was this big 20 years ago. I guess moving off of copper and moving on to VoIP and SIP and all the rest. Maybe that was the last big one.
Best things in
Um,
sliced bread. That's what
yeah.
was.
So awesome. So, let's cover for those that aren't really familiar. I think more and more people are becoming familiar with GigCX at the recent CCW. Obviously, there's multiple speakers talking about it, including the one that we've discussed previously, where they're talking about it no longer being a concept, but an inevitability, which is huge. And I
Yeah.
agree with that. Let's talk for a few minutes about what GigCX is. Why is it? Why is it the revolution that I mentioned? Why is it becoming an inevitability?
Yeah, so first of all, GigCX is really a flexible and on-demand contact center staffing model. So when we talk about gig, we're referring to the gig economy. That's Uber, Lyft, Upwork. I mean, these types of models where you have,
Fiverr, Grubhub, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I could keep going, right? Instacart. We we've seen a shift over the past 10, 15 years as these more modern employment models have taken hold in the market, where people really prefer to go or want to have a balance of full-time or complete independence of their work, where they go and they work for Uber, Lyft, and all these other options, and they build their own schedule. They're in control now of when they work, how much they work, who they work for, and then puts them in a position of really being able to control their earnings. They don't have the boss that they're, all the things that, we're seeing this quite a lot more in the younger generation. So late millennials and Gen Z
Yeah.
are adopting this way more than just about any other generation. And so this is becoming inevitable, because if these younger entry-level generations, which by the way is typically the contact center hiring pool, if these guys are all looking for more flexible work, well, then we as contact center leaders have to figure out a way to offer that flexibility. And that flexibility and contact centers and flexibility are like oil and water. I don't know that I don't know that contact centers are flexible at all. When you tell people where to work, when to work, how much to work, when to go to the bathroom. I mean, I say this lately, like, when was the last time I had to ask to go to the bathroom? Well, these guys do. And
I
not to
remember
mention,
having to do that.
so, I mean, if we're not going to accept it, why should we expect anyone else to accept it? Especially when there's so many options out there now where you can go earn competitive wages on your own terms. I think contact centers, and this is what we believe, we have to adapt to this. Otherwise, we're just never going to appeal to this generation and this workforce, and we're going to have a really hard time staffing and meeting our customers' needs. So I think it's really important. It's probably the most important thing we face in a post-pandemic economy.
I think that, adding on to that, when you're working essentially for yourself, you're getting to choose who you work for, when you work, where you're working from.
Yep.
You have an ownership mentality. There's always a difference between an employee and someone with an ownership mentality. The
100%.
pride of the work, how happy they are doing it because they're working for themselves essentially. It's a big difference. So, that's something that I think I think the pandemic opened Pandora's box to some extent. So you had a lot of these agents working for BPOs and other companies, and they got sent home to work, and there they are working like I am right now. And maybe their dog is on the floor, and they're comfortable, and they didn't have to drive and commute and deal with traffic. Then all of a sudden, it gets to the point in the pandemic where the call centers are saying, "All right, time to come back to the brick and mortar."
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them said, "No, I don't think I want to do that.
It is
I'm going to pass on that because they're also learning." I mean, right now outside the contact center, I know like half a dozen people that have taken gig worker jobs, whether it be marketing or any other, literally any kind of job out there. You could get a gig worker version where you get to work for yourself and choose who you're going to work for and when you work and everything else. And and I think that when their agents were told, "Come on back," they said, "No, I think I'm going to look at other opportunities." It probably didn't take too long for them to start finding out, hey, there's all these gig worker opportunities for me as a call center agent where I can use my experience, skills, and talent and not be an FTE who has no say in their schedule, what they're working on, when they work, and has to deal with driving through traffic every day for an hour to 2 hours. So I
you know what
think
I missed
that
out
kind
on.
of ruined it for contact centers a little bit, didn't it?
No, totally. I still hear it's still talked about widely about when are we coming back to the office. I hear companies talking about getting back to in person, to the brick and mortar. And again, I think it's great as an option. Like actually, I'm in a brick and mortar office right now, but it's, I'll tell you my schedule, and I think any of us and the flexibility that we expect for ourselves, we should expect an agent would want as well. Which, I find that I work really well in the mornings before I jump in my car and get down to my office. And then I work really well in my office until about 6 p.m. And then I have my own schedule, I have my own routine. It doesn't really fit the 9 to 5, but I work plenty of hours. And I think this is what we should expect our entire workforce to have this flexibility. So if you want to go back to the office, you can do that. But I think when you make it mandatory and you get back to this very rigid and structured work environment, you're going to lose people. And
Yeah.
and I understand why you would do that too, by the way. We can't just take 40 years of contact center operations best practices. So, forecasting, scheduling, workforce management, all of that. We can't just throw that out the window and say, we're flexible now and expect that you're just going to be able to continue meeting your customers' needs, which, by the way, that's more important than anything, is to make sure that you are doing what your customers expect.
Mhm.
But I think the way to do that is to use a gig model, which gives you this type of flexibility to give your agents the flexibility to work when and where and how much they want, as well as using a gig model to make sure that you're meeting your service levels and you've got the right caliber of talent and all the things that you expect from your contact center are still being delivered. So the way work has changed. If we go back to the old way, I think you'll be in trouble. Honestly, that's just my opinion.
I think a lot of the contact centers, I predict uh, from now on, they're going to start to lose more and more of those ideal agents, the ones they want to keep, the ones they hate to lose, the ones they're having trouble staffing right now.
Good
They're going
point.
to lose more and more of them to this flexible model. If we have two agents, equal experience, skills, talent, and everything, let's say they've both been contact center agents for 5 years. One of them is an FTE with no control over anything that has to drive through traffic to work. The other one gets to work when they want, who they work for, where they want to work from. They have a business owner mentality. They're happier. They
Agree.
have a more flexible schedule. If they want to work 25 hours a week instead of 40, they can do that. I think more and more of the ideal agents are going to opt for that model. They're already doing it, but it's going to happen more and more. There's people with their head in the sand right now. Is that an ostrich that does that? Anyhow, they're ignoring this evolution, but it'll get to the point where it's so painful it can no longer be ignored. And this isn't something where any company that wants to can just say, "Oh, yeah, all right, we're going to do gig work staffing now."
Yeah.
Because you notice that we have Uber and Lyft, but you notice we're not getting a whole bunch of new versions of Uber and Lyft, right? And that's because That's that system they built for workforce management to take all those people and all the shifts they want to work and skills and all these things and to be able to plug that in. This isn't regular workforce management. Being able to do that and manage that, that's millions of dollars and years of time to build something like that. And that's why GigCX companies like yours are the ideal partner for a company to augment and complement their staffing with, because you have that piece in place. You're able to, let's walk through the steps. What do you take over for now? Companies typically are augmenting with GigCX, but when
Yeah.
they do that, you're basically removing off of the client's plate the all of the recruiting and qualifying and background checks and hiring
Yep.
and payroll
Yep.
and the workforce management component of that. What am I missing?
I mean, you're hitting on all of it. I look at our model at least as full service. So you can tell me, hey, Trevor, we need 50 people on Tuesday at 10 a.m. And that's all we need. And then you give me that requirement. We obviously know how to train and the profile of the agent and all those things. But you put the burden on us. You say, hey, look, we're short staffed, or we've got this interval, this 30-minute interval, this hour-long interval, whatever it is, a week, 2 weeks,
Evening interval. Yeah.
evening, exactly. And you give me the hard stuff, and then we'll staff that for you. Because guess what? This is a perfect model for flexible agents that might have a full-time job. A lot of our agents work other jobs, just like Uber drivers have full-time jobs and they want to drive in the evening for some extra cash. That's a similar model to us. So if you're having trouble at 6 p.m. every day, which whenever, before I started Shift Off, I was running operations for a large telco every single day at 6 Eastern. We would just queue up. It's because the people were going home that were full time, and everyone was calling, and it was just the perfect storm. And I begged our partners, which were fantastic, to help me solve this, but they're using the same model as I am, so we have the exact same challenges. But when you add a gig model, you can get really specific to these times, and it actually works perfectly for these gig agents because they're getting off work. Maybe they've got another 2 or 3 hours in them, and they're gonna jump on right whenever you need them most. And that's how we operate. And you can start small. I encourage people to start small. Don't try something new and dive headfirst, and let's tiptoe in, let's feel comfortable, and let's make sure it works really well. And then as you kind of see it working, I think you're going to want to eventually get to about a third or even more of your business is supported by gig, because it offers such tremendous flexibility. It's perfect staffing every minute of the day. And then you have this surge capability, which, we've never had that before. I remember planning for 3 months to get 7% lift for this lift in volume I was expecting in a few months. First of all, I had to know that was coming. And second of all, I had to pull every lever under the hood to get 7%. But in our model, we hire 3 to 5 times as many people as you actually need. And they're always lined up, ready to go. Literally, as soon as we post any sort of opportunities to work, they're jumping at it. So you imagine when you have 3 to 5x the resources that you actually pay for, ready on the bench, ready to go, you can handle just about anything that your customers throw at you, or any sort of unexpected or expected event. It's a lever. I mean, I think any contact center operator has wished they had, especially when you get quality, amazing agents to do that.